Thank you so much for joining me today, Loren and Mouna. I'm so happy to be able to talk to you today about the women that you play in the show, The Porter. I love the fact that the show is about Black people, but we're getting to know more about the Black female characters and who they are as individuals away from the men in their lives. Like for you, Loren, you play Lucy. There's like Franklin, and then she has some interactions with Zeke. And then for Mouna, you play Marlene, who is the wife of Junior, Massey, played by Amel Amin. But we're getting to see who Marlene is away from Junior, and even her and the friendship that she's starting to develop with Zeke. I want the both of you to talk about just building your characters from the ground up, because these are new characters. These are like, we have no basis for these characters from history, because they're fictional, but it's based on real events. So for you, Moon, I want to start with you just talking about Marlene, because she's interesting, because she's a nurse and she's a mother. She has a son who is on the spectrum, but at that point in time, in that point in history, the 20s in Montreal, the term the spectrum didn't exist. They didn't know about autism. They didn't know about cognitive conditions. So talk about building your character and the research that you had to go into for working around Marlene and getting to know who Teddy was as a character.
So we were really lucky. The showrunners and the creator gave us so many resources to tap into, books, documentaries, and images to sort of channel these characters. But then also I just kind of wanted to ground my character in reality. We live in a time and age where so many of the issues that our characters are dealing with are current. What is it like to have a Black son? A Black son who has an interaction with a police officer, a son who is on the spectrum and neurodivergent, many of these experiences I have connections to within my own life. People who have been hospitalized for mental health issues, people dealing with poverty, whatever. And so for me, a lot of where I found Marlene was within myself, and my own desire to do for the community, to be on the ground, my own curiosity. I mean, I was before I think I even did this show, I would watch surgeries. I obsessively watch certain surgeries, which is really weird.
I'm with you. I've watched so many BBLs.
Oh, really? I watch like breast cyst excision surgeries because I have like cystic breasts. I have like massive cysts in my breast, and I want these cysts not only taken out, but I want to like chop them up, which is weird. Fibroadenoma.
I have seen a lot of cysts chopped up. I'm with you. We have to know what's in there.
Exactly.
And so all these sort of bizarre things that make me curious about the world are things that I channeled into this character. And I was really lucky. I had great conversations with Arnold Pinnock, our creator, about who this character was to him. And then, it grew from there.
And for you, Loren, like we've talked before about Lucia, the thing with her character that's very interesting to me personally is how her character is dealing with colorism and colorism in the Black community. And this is something like that really isn't talked about, I think, in the Black community in general, but it is something that's talked about a lot amongst Black women. Black women who are dark skinned.
We know all about it. We have so many conversations about
it. Like Black women are becoming more open and vocal about the hurt that colorism from within the Black community causes. And for Lucy, that's a big struggle. And then there's also how that ties into her wanting to be a singer and a star. And so just talk a bit about the challenges of those scenes, because those scenes can be like, for me, there's still like, I've seen a couple of the episodes a couple times, and then there's some moments I'm just like, like that, it just like really gets to you, especially if things that you've experienced. And like for you filming those scenes, and then also has there been any response from audiences that you received that have made you realize that this is an important topic to be discussed?
So you know what? No, let me think about the timeline. So when people first watch the show, I mainly hear about the singing and the dancing and like that, people rooting for me in that aspect. And I still think in that moment that colorism is just it's a thick conversation that I don't think people just want to have in passing, or just in just throwing in like, oh, whatever. I can always sense it. I can always see it. I've already had some pretty cool conversations and interactions about it, but there's a lot on this show that I think sometimes by the time you're done, it has overshadowed all of Lucy's struggle with uh colorism. But I'm hoping that people are still connecting with it. It's something I'm always hearing about. Whenever people are talking about things this show is addressing, they always mention the colorism. So I'm very happy that it's being talked about, especially the way it's always been swept under the rug. It's something that, like, almost like what systematic racism, where it's like we know it's there. Huh?
Systemic
racism, thank you. But how we know it's there, but it's still kind of awkward for some people to talk about, because it almost feels like everybody's having their own battle and journey with it, and it can always be kind of gaslit. So I think the same thing happens with colorism, where either it's embraced and you can actually talk about it and really be honest about your feelings on it, or it's kind of gaslit, through, especially with like men in particular. Of everybody that I've experienced colorism from, I would say it has been more so Black men who have like really just, I love me some Black men too, but it's just been that's been an honest place for me. Of course, it's come from everywhere, but specifically there for me, which is something that, again, you don't even want to talk about. You just kind of want to just like, okay.
Right. And talking a bit about the Black men and like the relationships between men and women, something that I'm finding very interesting with the show is how, like, for Black men, we talk a lot about sisterhood. And I find the show is leaning into that, but ever so subtly, especially for Marlene and her relationship with Faye. She, like, they're forming a relationship, and like they're both from, like, I guess you could say like poor middle classes, like bringers, but like they don't let what each of them does in the daytime affect who they are, like their relationships. Like Faye, she runs what we would call a house of ill repute, as they would say back in the day. She's a lady of the night. But like there's no class struggle between them. Like there's no animosity. And I love the fact that is a part of the show, because like we've had situations, I've seen films and shows by Black people where those kind of things create a barrier between the women, but that doesn't exist in this show. And so for both of you, I want to talk about just like building the friendships in these two, in between your two characters and the characters of other and other side characters, because there's one I'm seeing developing with Lucy and another character. I'm like, wait, are they becoming friends? Like, look at them putting, letting bygones be bygones. So I wanted for you to talk about building friendships and Black female sisterhood in the show and how it's being represented.
I hated us becoming friends. Go ahead though, Mouna.
I think, at least for my character, one of the things that they did a great job of doing is showing how like part of who she is like a lack of judgment. She's a woman who is here to serve community, and although obviously she hesitates to go into that space where she ends up meeting Faye, ultimately she knows that there's work to be done in this space, and that's her priority. And I think that when you look at the characters, you can see what is meaningful to them, what are their priorities. And for Marlene, it really is like connecting with people and helping them no matter the situation. And as you'll see, as you continue to watch the show, that includes her relationship with Gwen and some of the other gentlemen on the show as well, as things are revealed about their experiences. How she approaches it is something that, when we think about this time period, you wouldn't expect. But, again, there were all kinds of people, and they had all kinds of relationships, and it was incredible. Like, some of the conversations I ended up having with some of the people working on the show about their grandparents or this or that, and the things that were going on behind the scenes that everybody knew about. And it's like, wow, like people weren't as conservative as we tend to think.
My grandpa let me know that. He told me some stories, about my grandma, where I was like, Granddaddy, please relax.
Like TMI.
Right.
And you said that there's the character that I mentioned. You say you don't want to be friends with her. Why?
Me? Or
because
Lucy's character.
Because I had a strong issue. Now Lucy is better than me, okay? But I always had an issue with the fact that chicks slapped me and we just still talked right after. Like, I'm like, no, 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 no. But it was a different time. But still, to me, after you put your hands on me, and then talk about my complex, no, we're done. We're done. There is no, okay, cool. So we're gonna still be on the same team, but I hate you. And then for her to come back later, we had a nice little moment later where she comes back, and I genuinely enjoyed throwing it in her face. The petty side of Loren, not Lucy, Loren enjoyed playing that character of being like, oh, you're back, and must be how we come back. There's a full circle moment for you. Get out. I loved that. But then, I mean, I guess we did kind of find a common ground because, a lot of people who are mean are actually just operating out of trauma, though that's still not our fault. That's not my fault. That's for you to fix. It's still something to be considered. And like a lot of people aren't bad people. They just come from a bad situation or a bad circumstance, and hurt people really do hurt people. And I think that this is just an example of that, where this girl, she's not actually a bad person. She's a rude person, like she's a colors person, but her circumstances taught her that she's not actually a bad person. And we see that, a little later when they do kind of find a common ground. Now, I don't think they'll ever be friends, but I think that they will, hopefully as seasons go on, that they do continuously find common ground that spreads throughout the rest of the team.
Great. Thank you so much for your time and for talking with me and sharing with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck on the rest of the season.
Thank you.